أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصل اللهم على سيدنا ونبينا وشفيع ذنوبنا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المكرمين الغرر الميامين، سيما بقية الله في الأرضين وحجته على الخلائق أجمعين، سيدنا وإمام زماننا وصاحب نعمتنا وولي أمرنا مهدي هذه الأمة وطاووس أهل الجنة الحجة ابن الحسن العسكري، فداه أرواح العالمين. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. For the hastening of the reappearance of the Savior, the Master, the Avenger, Al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan al-Askari, recite aloud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajjil farajahum. My dear brothers and sisters, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Death is a certainty that is inescapable, and nowhere is this certainty presented as beautifully as it could possibly be than on the plains of Karbala. And in the saga and journey of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, may God's peace and blessings be upon him, who demonstrated that there are two types of death. There's the kind of death that comes to you and hunts you down and snatches you while you're woefully unprepared and abysmally in despair. Then there is this other kind of death, the one that you go to yourself, the one that you take active steps to reach it, and even though your efforts make no difference at all, it's the same death, it's the same fate, it is what it is. It's been determined when and where and how you die. The difference is how you view it. The difference lies in whether or not you take steps towards it, meaning you prepare and you train and you invest. And you're always aware of the fact that death is approaching you and you're approaching it. And that makes all the difference in the world. It means that you recognize death to be a mere bridge, a means of reaching another destination. It's like a train. When you're on the train, you don't spend much time or energy or effort in making the train ride super comfortable. Sure, you try to find a good seat, maybe one with a nice view. You try to ensure that this short journey is as comfortable as possible. But if it's not, for whatever reason, then you know it's not the end of the world. You simply persevere and you express and exhibit patience, because for you it's not so much the journey that matters, but rather the fact that you will head to a destination that you've chosen for yourself. If you're going to visit a loved one, then what happens on the journey and how much time it takes, whether it's 2 hours or 5 hours or a whole day or 2 days, does it really matter? Because you are constantly yearning to meet your loved one, to see your beloved. And so you won't expend much effort in what happens along the journey. You won't feel distress if something doesn't go your way. Or if you do, it'll be minimal. It's not a big deal for you because you're entirely focused on the destination. And that is the difference between the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those whose love and affection and devotion and dedication towards their Creator supersedes everything else. Everything else takes a back seat, just as they've trained all along. Every time they pray, they don't just mechanically move their limbs, not knowing what it means. Every single step is calculated, premeditated. When they raise their hands and say, Allahu Akbar, they're putting the entire world behind them because God is greater. That's why their distraction in the state of prayer is also minimized, if not completely eliminated, because they've already put the whole world behind them even prior to entering the state of salah. Allahu Akbar. Allah is greater. Even when they're going through times of turmoil and pain and tribulation, they constantly remind themselves, Allahu Akbar. God is greater. And so the contrast is nothing short of substantial, great, immense, as opposed to those whose life in this world is all they care about, which means the most minor of inconveniences agitates them, angers them, provokes them, makes them snap. Like when you go to a fancy restaurant and you notice the tiniest of smidges on the corners of the plate. What happens? You immediately call the chef. Even the waiter isn't enough anymore. Call your manager, you say. Because you feel like you've invested so much money. You've booked this table a week in advance. It's a special occasion. You've taken your wife, you've taken your family, and now you see a smidge, you see something that is less than desirable. Bring me the manager. What's going on here? Explain this to me. You demand an apology. You demand that your meal is offered to you that night for free. Because you're invested in this. You're paying 200, 300. And so for you, perfection is an absolute must. You won't compromise on the smallest of things. But when your investment is in something far greater than just the meal, or what's on the plate, or the excuse of the food that they've put in front of you, trying to make it fancy, trying to make it look presentable, when in fact the ingredients probably cost no more than $2, $3. And so then a tiny problem here or there doesn't matter to you. You're focused on achieving the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I mentioned several examples for when things go wrong, but your contract happens to be between you and God. Then those minor inconveniences, people being ungrateful towards you, people not appreciating your sacrifices, all of that will take a back seat. It doesn't matter anymore. And so in order for us to reach that state where death is a welcomed guest, not something that you dread, not something that you fear, but rather just a means of leaving this confined, constricted, uncomfortable, and in many ways terrible life, and going into something far more spacious, far more comfortable. A child, a baby, an infant, if it had the ability to express itself as it's coming out of the mother's womb, it would probably say, I don't want to leave. I'm happy just where I am. I'm here in my mother's belly, hearing her heartbeat constantly, being fed and being cared for. It's also warm and comfortable in the uterus. How could you explain to this infant that where you are at the moment might feel nice and cozy, but there's something far better awaiting you outside, far more comfortable and spacious? There are pleasures that you don't even recognize right now, and there's no way to explain it to the infant. That eating, I don't know, grapes or mangoes or whatever you fancy is so delicious. It's much better in terms of taste than what you're getting right now. There's no way you can explain that. But if you could, imagine the infant saying, no, I want to stay right here. Clinging on to whatever vestige of comfort that this infant has in its mother's womb. A person leaving this world experiences the same sets of emotions. No, I don't want to leave. I want to stay here. But there's something far bigger awaiting you. In fact, we have a narration that says that a believer, listen carefully to this, to those of you who have lost loved ones, mu'mineen who have passed from this world, this will give you a lot of comfort. The hadith says that a believer only leaves this world with their own volition, meaning they choose to leave this world. How so? The Imam explains. He says that the angel of death will come to this person who's on their deathbed and will say, do you wish to stay in this world? And you know what it's like. You've been through it all. You've been through so much pain these last few months or years. You've had this sickness, that illness. You've been terminal for this long. Do you want to stay here or do you want to go here? And they lift the veils of the afterlife, a life of absolute bliss and serenity in paradise. And he or she will be shown what awaits them in divine reward that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prepared for them in exchange for all their good deeds, their belief, their faith, and their sacrifices. And the believer will choose to leave this world. It'll be by their own will and consent and volition. Now, how do we achieve that? How can we get to the point? I want to give you some practical steps here. We're approaching the peak of calamity. We're too close to Ashura for meaningless discussions about secondary and tertiary topics. Things that have nothing to do with Imam al-Hussein. Things that have nothing to do with the core of our beliefs. Sadly, some of our pulpits have become places where you hear discussions that are so useless. It's become a form of entertainment. Some people go to listen to the speaker from the pulpit in order to be entertained. And I've always said this and discussed it among scholars and people much more learned than me, that I feel the pulpit has to be a place that makes the audience feel uncomfortable. If you don't feel uncomfortable, then you're not improving. You have to feel the pain. No pain, no gain, right? That goes for building muscle and bodybuilding. And it also certainly goes for when it comes to spiritual development and progress. If you don't feel the burn, if you don't feel the pain, then you won't see the need to improve yourself. And so any discussion that falls outside the sphere, the immediate sphere of Imam al-Hussein, we could link pretty much any topic to Imam al-Hussein as long as Islam has something to do with it. And of course, Islam is an all-encompassing religion. It's a religion that affects every facet of our lives. So I can technically and theoretically link any topic to Imam Hussein. I can say, I want to talk about bitcoins and cryptocurrencies tonight and somehow link it to Islam. Sure. But is that what we need? Is that what brings people around each other during the season of lamentation and commemoration for Imam al-Hussein? Is that something that's going to glue me back to the core of my faith? Is it the hook that'll bring me back over and over again? Will it improve me in any meaningful way? It saddens me to see some of the pulpits that are going left, right, and center. Again, I'm not trying to judge anybody, neither the speakers or the audiences. But really, I think the audience should have a greater level of awareness to recognize what sort of topics do you need. You can impose that by means of your attendance, by means of your questions and inquiries that you make with the speaker. You could say, listen, I want to connect with the Imam of my time. I want to connect with Imam al-Hussein on a visceral level. I want to become a better human being, and not just better in some peripheral matters, but like deep down in my heart, I want to be a beacon of light in a world of darkness. Anyway, شقشقة هدرت ثم قرت, as Amir al-Mu'mineen says. So, how can we do that? Are there any practical steps we can take such that death won't bother us, such that it won't be such an abysmal and depressing topic? I'll give you a few items that I've derived from the traditions of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, so that hopefully I and my dear audience, may Allah bless every single one of you, can take these practical lessons as we approach the day of Ashura and stand right next to the Ark of Salvation, and hopefully have the courage and have the determination to board it. This ship is about to sail, brothers and sisters. If any of us feels as though we have too much baggage on our shoulders, it's time to start shedding all that baggage. It's time for us to make a solemn declaration of allegiance to Abu Abdullah al-Hussein and say, Ya Abu Abdullah, I know I can't save myself from drowning in this quagmire of sin and immorality. of distraction and delusion. I know I can't do it myself, but you've promised that if I only raise my hand, that if I ask you for help, then you are Misbahu Hudan wa Safinatu Najat. You are the light of guidance and the ark of salvation. Hold my hand. Help me board this ark. And help me never to disembark from this ark, to stay with you. As'alullah, as we say in Ziyarat al-Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, Ziyarat Warith, you'll remember this statement. أسأل الله بالشأن الذي لك عنده وبالمحل الذي لك لديه أن يصلي على محمد وآل محمد وأن يجعلني معكم في الدنيا والآخرة يا أبا عبد الله. I ask you in the rank you have with Allah and the station that you hold, that I remain with you both in this world and the next. I want to be with you just as I came to these majalis. I wore black. I brought my kids. I brought my family. I told them to wear black. I put up a flag outside my house over my car saying, Ya Hussein, Ya Abul Fadl al-Abbas, Ya Aba Abdullah. I tried my best to be with you, to be associated with you. During these 10 nights, Ya Aba Abdullah, help me stay with you. I don't want to leave you after this. We are, after all, attributed to Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Those who are familiar with the Shia and their ways, if they saw you outside, your friends, your colleagues, they associate you with Imam al-Hussein. And they'll probably recognize through conversations that you've had with them that, oh, it's the season of Ashura, it's the season of Muharram. So take me with you, Ya Abu Abdullah. One poet says that when the king departs the palace and goes hunting or traveling or whatever, the king always takes his dog with him. Yes, it's a dog, it's worth nothing. It's just a pet. But it's the king's dog, after all. I'm a nobody, Ya Abu Abdullah. But I'm yours. I want to be your slave. I want to be your servant. Abduka wa ibnu abdika wa ibnu amatik. May Allah grant us this tawfiq. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. A few practical steps to prepare for death. Number one, we have so many narrations about writing your own will. Having a written will is a highly recommended act, brothers and sisters. And if you haven't already done so, make sure you write your will. Recently, the father of a number of individuals who happened to be close friends of ours, he passed away. I read his will that same night when he died. They sent his will through messages to some close friends. I couldn't help myself cry like a baby as I read this old man's will. I'd known him, of course, I had seen him many times, but the will was just so real. It was so genuine. And I felt to myself, if I had to write my will right now, I probably couldn't have done a better job than this simple man. Starts off by saying he included passages from certain du'as like Abu Hamza Thumali and others. And then he addresses his children. He says to them, my sons and my daughters, my loved ones, I left nothing for you in this world. Even though I had so many opportunities, listen carefully, so many chances to acquire wealth, which later I found out, or prior to engaging in that transaction, I found out that it was iffy, right? It was dodgy, as you'd say. And there could have been elements that weren't quite halal. And so I always took the cautious path and I avoided any transaction, any business venture that had even a whiff of haram. And because of that, I didn't leave you much. I have nothing to offer you as my inheritance, and for that I apologize. But you should know it's because of this that I ensured that you always ate halal food. I never gave you anything that was questionable, anything that was remotely haram. And so he said, all I have in this world is the house I lived in. And I ask you, my sons and daughters, that if your mother is still alive when I die, that you let her live in this house. Don't take the house away from her. Don't sell the house and distribute the inheritance and get something for her. Just let her live in this house. She's been here all her life. And then he starts to praise his wife and her sacrifices and how patient she was with him, raising good kids. And subhanAllah, it's a very big family. And maybe there are some exceptions here and there after all in every family, but overall the family is so dedicated, so religious. A group of Husseini soldiers for the Imam of the time. People who serve Abu Abdullah al-Hussein with utmost devotion. And so you can draw a direct link between the halal food that was offered to them by their father and the good, righteous upbringing given to them by their mother. That these kids grew up to be like this. So then he addresses his children and says, I advise you to attend the majalis of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. In fact, don't be content with simply attending them. Try and host them in your homes. Try and contribute towards the causes of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. Then he said, if you choose to sell the house at some point, by the way, his wife passed away before he did. So he said, if you choose to sell this house of mine, then I would like to ask that a third of the value of the house, because when you pass away from this world, you only get to control a third of your inheritance. The rest gets distributed in the proper manner in accordance with Islamic jurisprudence. But 1/3 of the inheritance, 1/3 of the estate, you have control over, and you can allocate that towards good causes. So he says, I want to allocate this 1/3, if that's okay with you. Even though he doesn't need their permission, but he's like, if it's okay with you, I want that third to go towards my local masjid, which is a masjid that he helped establish. And he used to hold majalis there. And he helped train scholars and speakers and reciters in that masjid, reciters of the Quran, reciters of eulogies of the Ahlul Bayt, alayhimus salam. As I said, a life of servitude towards the Imam of his time, despite living a simple life. He said, I want this third to be invested in this masjid and to hold majalis and to offer food to those who attend these majalis. And then at the end, he mentioned Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. He said, my only hope is that Imam al-Hussein takes my hand on the Day of Judgment. Iraqis like to recite these lines of poetry at the conclusion of every majlis, every series. At the end of Muharram, for example, they all get together, the khuddam, the servants of Abu Abdullah, and they say the following. They say, إحنا غير أحسيان ما عدنا وسيل والذنوب هواي شفتها ثجيل. We have no means of reaching Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and achieving His satisfaction other than Hussein. And we've committed too many sins. They're overbearing on our shoulders, on our backs. وَغَدًا يَغْدُ لَنَا سَدًّا مَنِيعًا. Hopefully on the Day of Judgment, Imam al-Hussein will protect us. He will look after us. He will say to his grandfather Rasulullah and to his father and mother and brother that this person cried in my majlis. This person did something for my sake. He upheld my remembrance. To write your will, brothers and sisters, is critical. Writing your will is one of the most spiritual exercises you could engage in. When you're writing that will, it makes you ponder your own fate. It makes you think about death in a way you haven't thought about before. It's not some theoretical exercise. It's real. You realize how palpable death is, how close it is to you, because you're literally leaving instructions and words by which you will be remembered after you die. And so every word is carefully crafted. Every sentence is meticulously written, because once you're gone, and people will read these words after your connection to this life has been completely severed. So write your wills. We have many traditions about that. That's number one. Number two, buy a kafan. Buy your own shroud. Some people have elaborate ways of getting that kafan, to a scribe, a calligrapher who might write Dua al-Jawshan al-Kabir, for instance, on that kafan. Others who are more dedicated, perhaps, they might write Dua al-Jawshan al-Kabir on the kafan themselves. Right? This dua that we recite in the holy month of Ramadan. They write that. It contains 1,000 names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the kafan. We have narrations that if you obtain your kafan, your shroud, and you store it somewhere in your home, لم يكتب من الغافلين. You will not be included in the list of those who are too distracted. You'll be someone who's in constant remembrance and awareness of their fate, of their death, of their departure, which is exactly what we need. There are too many distractions around us in this world. This life, with all of its glitter and glamour and bling and all the advertising agencies, their job is to try and distract you. It's to try and sell you not just a product, but sell you this dunya. Make this dunya look nice and appealing and attractive. With all of these distractions on the street, on social media, on television, in gatherings, majalis al-battaleen, when we gather around and talk about meaningless, pathetic things. There was a man who was the uncle of the Shah of Iran. Shah in the Qajar dynasty. He was once sitting with other members of the royal family. SubhanAllah, his name was Farhad Mirza. I don't know if you've heard that name. He has written one of the most elaborate and beautiful maqtals of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. By far one of the most beautiful. Very eloquent, very descriptive. And he was sitting with his contemporaries, his cohorts, other members of the royal family. And each one of them, as they would, these rich people, I've seen enough of them in my time. When they gather around, they're talking about what? What investment they recently made. How much of a margin of profit did they make? How this investment turned out. What's the next trending thing that they should all get in on the action? And so on and so forth. And so one of them said, I've got this much money saved up in this Swiss account. And the other one said, I've got this much in this French account, this British account, or whatever. Farhad Mirza was quiet. He was the oldest, the most mature. They looked at him, they said, hey, what about you? Tell us what you've got. Which bank gives you the highest interest? Maybe share some of your secrets. Sharing is caring. He looked at them. He said, I'll tell you what my two biggest investments have been. One was writing this maqtal of Imam al-Hussein. And the other is my assistance and my contribution towards the construction of the shrine of Imam Musa ibn Ja'far alayhi salam. That's my biggest investment. Forget money, forget your account in the bank, forget. I mean, what is this at the end of the day? What are you leaving? Who are you leaving it to? Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam says that when you leave an inheritance, he said you're leaving to two types of people. It's one or the other. One is a good heir, a good son or daughter who's righteous and who's pious, who will spend that money in good causes, which means that they will achieve success through the very same money that you got nothing but misery from. In other words, you became miserable working so hard non-stop to accumulate the wealth, only to then give it to someone who will reap all the rewards, get all the thawab by spending it in the good causes. So you became miserable, but they reap the rewards. That's one person you're leaving it to. Or, God forbid, you're leaving it to someone who's immoral, someone who's impious, someone who's going to spend that money in all the wrong places, for which it means that you will become an accessory to sin. So why bother? Why bother accumulate all this money? So what? Then the Imam says, he says, you are too valuable to favor either of these two kinds of people over yourself. Is that not true? The hadith says, Kun wasiyya nafsik. This hadith has to be written, I think, in every cemetery. Big banners. In fact, every mosque. Kun wasiyya nafsik. Be your own executor. You know how people, when they die, they might appoint an executor. They say, I want you to execute the terms of my will. I want my son to pay someone to pray on behalf, to fast on my behalf, to go to ziyarah, to go to hajj, right? You need an executor to carry out all those steps. You need your children to do good deeds and to send them your way, to give you the rewards. The Imam says, Kun wasiyya nafsik. Be your own executor. Who do you think is gonna care more about you? You or someone else? If you yourself do not do all those good deeds, your heirs, your children, they're far less likely to care about you. Even if they're good kids, there's no way they're going to care more than you do. Kun wasiyya nafsik. Anyway, Farhad Mirza, by the way, was rewarded immensely in the end. He has a story which we'll leave for another time. But he was ultimately buried in the shrine of Imam Musa ibn Ja'far alayhi salam. He reaped the rewards of all those investments that he made for the Ahlul Bayt. They say that somebody, I'll mention the story and then wrap up. Somebody was approached, he was a wealthy businessman, and he was approached by a group of people who wanted to build a Husayniyah in the holy city of Karbala. This is recent, let's say about 70 years ago or so. So they went to him and they presented the project. They were observing his facial features, which were difficult to read. They don't know if he's happy with the project or not, if he's going to contribute or not. And in the end, he said to them, well, how much is the project going to cost? They were careful. They didn't want to tell him the full cost of the project because it would have been a lot. And they were afraid that if they told him it would cost this large sum of money, that he might say, no, that's too big. You won't be able to pull it off. You know, some people are like that, right? Where's your sustainability report? Show me your business plan. Show me the details. And sure enough, you need all those things, but some people, if they heard a big amount, they'd be like, no, that's not for me. So they said, you know, maybe read this brochure. Read this paperwork. We've got all the details written down. And so he said to them, I'm sorry, my eyesight has become poor. I'm too old. and I don't have my glasses on. So just tell me how much it costs. So because they had no other choice, they told him. He said, fine, I'll cover the whole cost. And then he added a little bit more to ensure that all the material that was used was high quality material that would last a long time. I have a few other examples of people who ensured that the structure of this Husayniyah, the structure and foundation of this masjid is one that lasts a long time. Because as long as it stands, I get to benefit from it in my afterlife. So he gave them the full amount. They were surprised. They took it. They built the Husayniyah. Then when he passed away, they went to pay their respect to his children. His son greeted them at the door. He said, I have a message for you from my father. How? He said, I saw him in a dream. I'm not the kind of person who tells dreams from the minbar, but the reality is that this story and this dream is congruent with and compatible with our traditions as well. That if this is how you engage with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He reciprocates the treatment. He said, I saw him in my dream. He said, tell the people building this Husayniyah in Karbala that just as I didn't put on my glasses to look at the fine print, to look at the detail, the angels also didn't put on their glasses when it came to going through my actions and looking at all the mistakes and all the sins and so forth. I was also able to get away with some of those minor problems through the intercession of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. So, write your will, obtain a shroud, and be your own executor. Think of all the things you would like your family to do for you after you depart. Do them yourself. Do them yourself. Finally, I'll leave you with this hadith. Amir al-Mu'mineen was asked, Mal isti'adadu lil maut, ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. How do we prepare for death? The Imam gave them 3 key things to do. Listen carefully. Number 1, he said, Al-amalu bit-takalif. To ensure that your obligations are fulfilled. Any wajib that's been prescribed upon you by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you perform it and you perform it well. Al-amalu bit-takalif, number 1. Number 2, the Imam said, وَاجْتِنَابُ الْمَعَاصِي. Avoid haram, illicit, forbidden acts. Stay away from it all. Make a commitment. Amir al-Mu'mineen declares in a beautiful law of physics, the Imam says, عَلَى قَدَرِ النِّيَّةِ تَكُونُ مِنَ اللَّهِ الْعَطِيَّةِ. It's one of my favorite hadith, and I've mentioned it hundreds of times. He says, if your commitment, if your intention, the very intention, if it's strong enough, then the backing and support from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be just as strong. If I have a weak intention and I'm half-hearted about avoiding an act of sin, then I can't really expect Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to carry the load for me. I can't expect God to physically prevent me from committing this sinful act if I myself haven't made a strong enough intention. So make a strong intention. Use the name of Imam al-Hussein and his remembrance in order to enter into a state where you're like, that's it. This sin that I've been contaminated by, I'm done with it. If you say that with sincerity, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send you His reinforcements. He will call in the cavalry of angels to ensure that you have the support you need to navigate through this difficult and rugged terrain which you'll face, especially at the beginning. But you'll be able to get over it and enter safe waters and ultimately into safe shores. So number 1, fulfill your obligations. Number 2, avoid sins. Number 3, the Imam says, وَالْإِجْتِمَالُ بِمَكَارِمِ الْأَخْلَاقِ. Also ensure that your conduct, your treatment towards others, your behavior is one that is noble and beautiful and nice. What does that mean? Well, what it means is what's articulated in the Islamic golden rule, which says, أحسن إلى من أساء إليك. If somebody treats you badly, treat them with kindness. أحسن إلى من أساء إليك واصفح عمن ظلمك. And if someone oppresses you, forgive them. Forgive them for the sake of Imam al-Hussein, for the sake of Amir al-Mu'mineen, for the sake of Fatima al-Zahra. Just literally say this, Ya Fatima al-Zahra, this is for you. I'm done with this person. I'm not going to hate them. I'm not going to harbor any ill intentions towards them. That's it. And this is for your sake. Right? وَأَعْطِي مَنْ حَرَمَكَ. And the one who refuses to help you and give you, you help them and give them in their hour of need. I'll give you one quick example and then go to the masa'ib. Marwan ibn al-Hakam was a person who, let's just say, there weren't too many people as evil as this man. And what he did to the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, I can probably mention some of it, but there are things I cannot even vocalize. For example, and I won't get into details, I can't. We've all heard that Yazid alayhi la'inullah beat the severed head of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. That Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad beat the head of Imam al-Hussein. But no one did to the head of Imam al-Hussein what Marwan ibn al-Hakam did. May Allah raise him in the lowest pits of the hellfire. When he took the head of Imam al-Hussein, I won't say what he did to the blessed head, but when he held the head of Imam al-Hussein, he recited lines of poetry. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Basically, he said, how beautiful and cool it is for me to be holding your head right now. He said, Ya Hussein, Ya Aba Abdullah, your cheeks are rosy and red. Then he said, I have finally relieved the vengeance from my heart by doing to you what I am doing right now. This is Marwan. In fact, it was Marwan who told the governor of Medina, Imam al-Hussein told the governor, when he invited the Imam to come and give his pledge of allegiance, Imam al-Hussein told him, نُصْبِحُ وَتُصْبِحُونَ وَنَرَى وَتَرَوْنَ. Let's wait until the morning and see what happens. The governor said to the Imam, that's fine. اذهب راشدا مهديا. Absolutely, Ibn Rasulullah. He wasn't a good man, but he just didn't want to be the person to kill Imam al-Hussein. He told the Imam, fine, you can go, and tomorrow we can meet and we can discuss this. It was Marwan sitting next to him who said, don't let him go. Apprehend him. Arrest him. وَإِنْ أَبَى فَضْرِبْ عُنُقَهُ. If he refuses, you should cut his head off. And I will then take his head next to the shrine of his grandfather, Rasulullah, that is. Allahu Akbar. And then I will carry the head all the way to Sham. Don't let him go. Then he used the profanity against Imam al-Hussein, which I can't even mention. This is Marwan. This man, 3 years after the massacre of Karbala, the people of Medina refused to pledge allegiance to Yazid. They withdrew their commitment to him, their bay'ah, and they rose against the government. When there was an uprising, people felt that, anyone connected with the government was now at risk. One of whom was Marwan, Al-Wazagh ibn al-Wazagh, as Rasulullah called him, the lizard, the son of the lizard. He was Tarid of Rasulullah. the one exiled by the Holy Prophet. The Prophet of mercy exiled this man. Anyway, so Marwan feared for his life and for the life of his family and children. So he tried to take them and run away, but he realized that there were too many people assembled around the border of Medina, and that if they found him, they might take him and capture his women and children. And so he went to Abdullah ibn Umar and he said to him, I'm leaving in the dead of night. I would like you to look after my family. Take my family, my wife, my children. And he was married to Aisha bint Uthman ibn Affan. So the daughter of Uthman was his wife. Abdullah ibn Umar said to him, no, I want no part of this. I don't want to take your family and then have the people of Medina ambush me because they want to get to your family. So take your family, whatever happens to you, I couldn't care less. So what did he do? He went to Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam. Marwan was one of the people who would tie the hands of the women of Rasulullah, the aunts and sisters of Imam al-Sajjad with his hands, with those ropes. He came to Imam Zayn al-Abidin. Look how the tables have turned. Imagine what Imam Zayn al-Abidin didn't even have to do anything to his family. He could have simply told him what Abdullah ibn Umar said. Go. I still remember what you've done to my family, to my women, to my children, to my brothers and sisters. But when he came to him, he said to him, Ya ibn Rasulullah, I know what I've done, but I could really use your help right now. I want you to look after my family. The Imam said, absolutely. In fact, as Zamakhshari and others have mentioned, that Imam Zayn al-Abidin took 400 women and their children under his wing, including Aisha bint Uthman ibn Affan, the wife of Marwan. The Imam took them out to a remote farm that was owned by Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam, and he stayed there for months looking after them, feeding them, protecting them, until things calmed down. When Marwan came back, he handed his family over to him. So, Makarim al-Akhlaq, as Amir al-Mu'minin says, you want to be prepared for death? Do this. Those who hurt you, those who oppress you, those who curse you, you treat them with nothing but honor and respect. If you do that, Amir al-Mu'minin says, لا تبالي وقع الموت عليك أم وقعت على الموت. Remember this statement. At that point, you won't care whether death falls upon you or you fall upon death, which are the words uttered by Ali Akbar alayhi salam. At some point, Imam al-Hussein had his head in the lap of his son Ali Akbar. This is rather strange, isn't it? That a father would place his head in the lap of his son. Tells you something about their relationship. Suddenly Imam al-Hussein woke up saying, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Bi-abi anta wa ummi ya Aba Abdullah. Ali al-Akbar said to him, Father, why do I see you doing istirja', saying we belong to Allah and to Him is our return? Imam al-Hussein told him certain things, what was about to happen. So Ali al-Akbar says to his father, he says, Aba awalasna ala al-haq, are we not upon the truth? Are we not truthful? Imam al-Hussein responded to him saying, yes, Ya Bunay, absolutely we are. That's when Ali al-Akbar showed his father what a wonderful upbringing he had provided him with. He said, إِذَنْ لَا نُبَالِي أَوَقَعْنَا عَلَى الْمَوْتِ أَمْ وَقَعَ الْمَوْتُ عَلَيْنَا. Then we don't care whether we fall upon death or it falls upon us, as long as we are truthful and righteous. Which is why on the day of Ashura, when Ali al-Akbar came to his father There were two permissions sought from the Imam, which were so easy and quick. One was that of Hur, and the other was that of Ali Akbar. فجاء إلى أبيه استأذنه للقتال. When he asked for his father's blessings to leave, أذن له الحسين. Imam al-Hussein immediately told him, yes son, you can go. It is at that point that Ali Akbar turned around and headed towards the enemy camp. No goodbyes, no farewells, no hugs, no embrace. Some of them have said that Ali Akbar did go at the instructions of Imam al-Hussein to the tent of the women, to his aunt Zainab, to bid them farewell. But with Imam al-Hussein himself, no, he turned away and started heading towards the enemy camp. That is when Imam al-Hussein, his eyes were filled with tears. Then immediately the Imam could no longer look at his son. Ya Abu Abdullah, you couldn't even watch your son walking. God only knows what happened to you when you came to his side after he had fallen to the ground. Abu Abdullah then said, addressing Umar ibn Sa'd, he said, Ya Umar ibn Sa'd, قطع الله رحمك كما قطعت رحمي. May God sever your lineage just as you have severed mine. Who is this son? Imam al-Hussein says something about Ali al-Akbar, which, if you recall a few nights ago, I said you can never compare the Ahlul Bayt with anybody else. The infallible Imams, they have a special rank. No comparisons could be drawn. No titles of the Imams should be given to anyone, no matter who. But look at what Imam al-Hussein did. The Imam said things which he probably wouldn't have said if Ali al-Akbar was to stay alive, because that would have confused people. After Ashura, after Imam al-Hussein, people would have said he's the Imam. What did the Imam say? He made a comparison. But what kind of comparison? If I told you, for example, that this man, he is like Al-Shaykh Al-Mufid, Al-Shaykh Al-Saduq, Al-Allama Al-Majlisi, if people knew that this person resembled these great scholars, they'd probably come to watch them pray. They would want to see the spirituality exuding from them that would remind them of this great scholar. But no, this is just a comparison. I'm not even saying he is the one with the closest resemblance to this alim. I'm saying that he has some similarity. And yet, listen to what the Imam said. He said, Allahumma ashhad ala ha'ula'i al-qayyam faqad baraza ilayhim ashbahu an-nas, the one with the closest resemblance, ashbahu an-nas خلقا وخلقا ومنطقا برسولك. Even among Imam al-Hussein, Lady Zainab Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, this young man reminded them of Rasulullah. He had the closest resemblance to the Holy Prophet. Allahu Akbar. أشبه الناس خلقا. His appearance reminded us of Rasulullah. When they were hitting him and striking him with their swords, it's as if they were striking Rasulullah. Ajarakallah baqiyat Allah. خلقان وخلقان, his demeanor, his akhlaq was the closest resemblance to Rasulullah. ومنطقا برسولك, the way he spoke with authority, with truth, resembled that of Rasulullah more than anybody else. وكنا إذا اشتقنا إلى نبيك, whenever Hussein yearned for Rasulullah, whenever Abu Abdullah missed his beloved grandfather, نظرنا إلى هذا الغلام, we would look at this young man. لهفي عليك أبا عبد الله. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam says something which I still struggle in understanding this statement. He says about Ali Akbar, he's addressing him in the ziyarah. He says, Ya Abul Hasan, that was his kunya. He says to him, Ya Abul Hasan, lam tahda ala abika zafrah. You know, when you go through a tragedy, then another tragedy happens. You lose a family member, then a few days later another one dies. The second tragedy usually supersedes the first one. It makes the first one more bearable because it's more fresh. Imam al-Sadiq says that the pain and the burning of losing you never subsided with your father. Even when Al-Qasim was killed, Abu Abdullah's heart was burning from the loss of Ali Akbar. When he lost Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, his heart was still burning like an amber from losing his son Ali Akbar. Aywa waylah wa musibatah. Ali Akbar went towards the enemy, فقتل فيهم مقتلة عظيمة حتى ضج أهل الكوفة من عدد من قتل. He killed so many of them that the people of Kufa said, how could one man kill so many of us? He had the courage of his grandfather Amirul Mu'mineen and his sword. He had the bravery of Ali ibn Abi Talib. He then began reciting this epic. He said to them, Ana Ali ibn al-Husayn ibn Ali. Allahu Akbar. You know, when you introduce yourself like this among the enemy, how much harder they will strike you when you mention the name of Ali in front of them. Ana Ali ibn al-Husayn ibn Ali. نحن وبيت الله أولى بالنبي. تالله لا يحكم فينا ابن الدعي. Illegitimate children can never rule over us. Authority belongs to Rasulullah and his family. At some point, he was trying to avoid the enemy and their archers and their swordsmen. So he lowered his head, trying to hide behind the shield. Then something happened. Ajarakallah ya Hujjat ibn al-Hasan. A man came and stabbed him with the spear in his side. Then The horse headed in a direction. Someone struck him on the head. Blood began gushing out of his head. It covered the horse's face. The enemy then stood still, saying, "Let him come to us. Everyone will get their fair share of striking Ali Akbar. We will hit two birds with one stone. We could kill Hussein and we will try, but let's do something to his son that would kill Abu Abdullah 1,000 times." The same way they did that to Amir al-Mu'mineen. We could have killed Ali, they said, but let's do something between the wall and the door that will leave Ali dying over and over again for the rest of his life. So they began striking Ali al-Akbar. فَقَطَّعُوهُ إِرَبًا إِرَبًا. At some point, Imam al-Hussein heard his son's voice. He called out, "Aba alayka minni salam." Peace be upon you, O father. "Hada jaddi Rasulullah." This is my grandfather. وَقَدْ سَقَانِي بِكَأْسِهِ الْأَوْفَى. He has quenched my thirst and he has a message for you. He says, "Tell your father, عَجِّلْ إِلَيْنَا الْقُدُومِ يَا أَبَا عَبْدِ اللَّهِ." Hurry to us, O Hussein. Imam al-Hussein went towards his son. There are things here that I cannot say. When the Imam arrived next to him, فَشَهَقَ الْغُلَامُ شَهْقَةً. Right before his father's eyes, he breathed his last and died in front of him. Abu Abdullah, instead of disembarking from his horse, فَرَمَى بِنَفْسِهِ عَلَى وَلَدِهِ. The Imam threw himself onto his son Ali. He embraced him, but he wasn't content with that. فَوَضَعَ خَدَّهُ عَلَى خَدِّهِ. He put his cheek against his son's cheek. بُنَيَّ عَلِي بُنَيَّ عَلِي على الدنيا بعدك العفا ما أجرأهم على الرحمن وعلى انتهاك حرمة الرسول.